When Daniel Hayes walked into the marble-lined boardroom on the 54th floor of Aurora Holdings, he wore the confident smile of a man who believed the world bent to his ego. Sydney's skyline glittered behind him through the panoramic windows, the harbour stretching out like a promise of power he thought belonged to him alone. And today, he wanted to impress everyone in that room, not with skill, not with leadership, but with the woman clinging to his arm. Mia. Younger, glamorous, dripping in designer labels she didn't pay for. She flashed a bright, rehearsed smile at the executives watching them enter. Daniel loved it, loved the eyes, loved the attention, loved the shock. "Gentlemen," he said, gesturing proudly to Mia like she was a luxury car he had just purchased. "This is Mia. She'll be joining us today." A few awkward looks flickered across faces around the table, whispers, confusion, discomfort. Everyone in that room knew Daniel was married. Knew he had a wife who until 6 months ago attended every major event by his side, a wife who was known in Sydney's elite circles for her grace, intelligence and softness, a wife who had disappeared from every social function without a single explanation. Her name was Claire Hayes, and no one had seen her in months. Daniel pretended not to notice the tension as he pulled out a chair for Mia. She giggled too loudly, running her hand along his suit sleeve like a possession marking its territory. "Let's get started," Daniel said, voice dripping with arrogance. "We're closing the Hastings contract today, so I expect professionalism." The irony was lost on him, or maybe he was too self-absorbed to care. The meeting began. Daniel dominated the conversation, speaking over his own team, over-explaining points, showing off like a man convinced he was untouchable. Mia sat beside him scrolling her phone, not even pretending to be discreet. Her perfume filled the room. Her laugh interrupted presentations. Her presence made seasoned executives shift uncomfortably in their seats. But Daniel felt powerful, seen, adored, the perfect illusion, until the glass doors slid open. Every head turned, and silence fell so thick the air itself seemed to freeze. Daniel stopped mid-sentence, his breath caught, and his smile shattered. Because the woman walking into the room, calm, elegant, composed, was the last person he expected. Claire, his wife, or rather, the woman he used to call his wife. She walked with a quiet authority that made the entire boardroom rise instinctively from their chairs, not because she demanded it, but because her presence did. Her tailored navy suit fit her perfectly. Her hair was pinned back in a sleek twist. Her heels clicked softly against the marble as she reached the head of the table. She didn't look at Daniel first. She acknowledged the executives with a polite nod. Then she faced him. Her eyes were colder than the ocean cliffs at Dover Heights. "Please," she said to the room, "remain seated." Daniel forced a smile, panicked and trembling at the edges. "Claire, what are you doing here?" She didn't answer him. Not yet. Instead, she placed a folder on the table and addressed the board with calm professionalism. "Good morning. As of this morning, Aurora Holdings finalized the acquisition of Hastings International." The executive straightened. Mia blinked, confused. Daniel frowned. Claire continued, her voice smooth, steady, devastating. "I have been appointed Chief Executive Officer effective immediately." Daniel's face drained of color. The room erupted in quiet shock. Mia's jaw dropped. Claire finally turned to Daniel, her gaze cutting through him like a surgical blade. "How you didn't know?" she asked softly, almost kindly, but there was nothing kind in the way she looked at him. Daniel stumbled over his words. "See, Claire, how? You're the new CEO. That's impossible. I was supposed to be promoted," she finished. "Yes, I'm aware that was your expectation." He stared at her, choking on panic. The executives watched like spectators at a collision they couldn't stop. Claire opened her folder, sliding a document toward him. During my absence, I was finalizing negotiations with the Hastings board. Privately, she paused. Your father offered me the position 2 months ago. The room inhaled sharply. Daniel's father, the founder, the man whose approval Daniel had never quite earned. You? Daniel whispered. He gave it to you? He gave it, she said, to the person he trusted. Silence. Crushing. Absolute. Claire didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She didn't even raise her voice. She didn't need to. She simply existed in her power, and it destroyed him. Now, she said, pulling out the next document, regarding your role in the company. Daniel leaned forward, desperate. Claire, please, just talk to me. She looked at him with the emptiness of a woman whose heart had been shattered long before this moment, a woman who no longer owed him an explanation. I'm not here as your wife, she said quietly. I'm here as your CEO. His breath hitched. Mia shifted uncomfortably, sensing danger she wasn't prepared for. Claire placed the final document in front of him. Daniel Hayes, she said, you are formally suspended pending an internal review. Gasps. Daniel jerked upright. Suspended. Because of what? Because I moved on. Claire leaned in slightly, voice calm enough to drown him. You are being suspended, she said, for conduct unbecoming of an executive, including bringing your mistress to a contract negotiation. Mia shrank back in her chair. Claire, Daniel whispered, don't do this. Claire looked at him the way one looks at a stranger. I'm not doing anything to you, she said. You did this to yourself. And before he could react, before he could plead, before he could even breathe, Claire delivered the blow that would mark the beginning of his unraveling. Security, she said. The doors opened. 2 guards stepped inside. Please escort Mr. Hayes from the building. Daniel stood abruptly, choking on disbelief. Claire, please, this is my company. She looked him straight in the eye. Not anymore. And as security took him by the arms, dragging him toward the door, Mia scrambled after him in panic. Claire didn't look at either of them. She didn't have to, because from that moment forward, Daniel Hayes's fall had officially begun. E a vingança de Claire estava apenas começando. Claire didn't watch Daniel being dragged out of the boardroom. She simply closed the folder in front of her with a calm precision that sent a quiet shiver through every executive at the table. The message was clear. She was in control now, and nothing, not even her husband's humiliation, would shake her focus. She turned toward the projection screen. Let's continue, she said with a steady voice, advancing to the next slide. The executives straightened their posture, some stealing nervous glances at the door Daniel had just been taken through. But Claire ignored the tension entirely. Her presentation was sharp, strategic, and flawless. For 30 uninterrupted minutes, she broke down the acquisition with a mastery none of them had ever seen from Daniel. Every question was answered before anyone could ask. Every doubt was extinguished, every risk mitigated. Claire was not just qualified, she was superior. When the meeting finally ended, the board members stood one by one, shaking her hand with sincere respect. One of the senior directors murmured, "We never knew you were this involved behind the scenes." Claire smiled politely. "You weren't supposed to." She gathered her documents, placed them neatly into her leather portfolio, and walked out of the room with measured steps. Meanwhile, down in the lobby, Daniel was being escorted through the glass doors like a disgraced politician. Phones angled subtly toward him as staff pretended not to record. Shame clung to him like a second skin. Mia rushed after him, her heels clacking loudly on the marble floor. "Daniel! Daniel, wait!" He spun around, face twisted with panic and humiliation. "Mia, shut up, this is your fault." "My fault?" she snapped, her voice rising. "You said your wife disappeared. You said she was depressed or something. You never said she was a CEO." "She wasn't," Daniel hissed. "She was my wife." She was supposed to be at home, relaxing, staying out of my way. Mia scoffed. Well, she didn't stay out of your way today. Daniel clenched his jaw, scanning the lobby like a trapped animal searching for an exit. I need to talk to her. I need to fix this. Mia laughed bitterly. Fix what? Your marriage? Your job? Your reputation? She destroyed you in front of everyone, Daniel, and honestly, she crossed her arms. You deserved it. Daniel froze. What did you just say? Mia shrugged. You were never going to leave her, not for me. You liked the idea of having a younger woman, not the reality of it. Her voice turned venomous. You used me. I used you. Now we're both screwed. She turned on her heel and walked out of the building, leaving him standing alone on the footpath in the middle of Sydney's CBD, humiliated, unemployed, abandoned, and utterly lost. But upstairs, Claire wasn't thinking about him at all. She was in her new office, the CEO suite, running her fingers slowly across the polished walnut desk that once belonged to Daniel's father. The city stretched wide before her through floor-to-ceiling windows. A soft knock pulled her from the moment. Her assistant stepped in. Mrs. Hayes, sorry, Miss Morgan, your father is on line 1. Claire felt her pulse warm. She nodded and picked up the phone. Hi, Dad. On the other end, a deep, steady voice replied, I saw the news. You handled it well. Claire exhaled, letting her shoulders relax for the first time since walking into the boardroom. It went better than I expected. It went exactly as planned, he corrected. You've worked for this. Don't let anyone, especially Daniel, make you doubt it. Claire smiled softly. Thank you. I'm proud of you, he said. The words hit her harder than she expected. Come to the house tonight. Celebrate properly. I will, she whispered. When she hung up, Claire allowed herself a single moment, just one, to close her eyes and breathe. Months of betrayal, months of silence, months of pretending she didn't know about Daniel's affair, months building something in secret so he could never destroy her again. And today, she had taken back everything he tried to strip away. Not as his wife, not as the woman he underestimated, but as the woman who outgrew him. However, Daniel Hayes was not done. Not even close. And the storm he was about to unleash would test Claire in ways she wasn't ready for. Not yet. Daniel wandered through the streets of Sydney like a man punched out of his own life. The business district buzzed around him with its usual noise, cars honking, trams rattling by, people rushing to meetings he was no longer part of. His world had shrunk to humiliation and disbelief. He pulled out his phone. Hundreds of messages, missed calls from co-workers, notifications from news outlets. A headline flashed across the screen. Aurora Holdings announces new CEO, Claire Morgan takes leadership in sudden executive shift. Claire Morgan, not Claire Hayes. She had already dropped his name. He swallowed hard. The sting was sharper than he expected. He scrolled further and found photos, taken minutes earlier, of him being escorted out of the building. Captions were already circulating. Disgraced executive removed from headquarters. His chest tightened. Anger, panic, betrayal. Mostly shame. He stormed toward the curb and flagged a taxi, rushing inside. Take me to Vaucluse, he ordered. As the car sped toward the coastal cliffs, Daniel's mind raced. Claire had been planning this for months, behind his back. While he was busy basking in vanity, flaunting Mia, ignoring signs that something deeper was happening, Claire had been silently building power. And now she had taken everything. He gripped the seat, knuckles white. She can't do this to me, he muttered. She can't. But she already had. Meanwhile, in the CEO suite, Claire reviewed the final documents that cemented her position. Her new assistant knocked lightly. Miss Morgan, your lawyer is here for the last signatures. Claire nodded. Send him in. Her lawyer, a poised woman named Victoria, entered with a confident stride. "You handled today brilliantly," she said as she placed the papers on the desk. Claire signed each page without hesitation. "One more thing," Victoria added. "The separation agreement is ready whenever you want to proceed." Claire paused. Her pen hovered over the final signature line. "He will fight it," Victoria warned. "He will try to manipulate you emotionally. He will beg. He will threaten. Men like Daniel always do." Claire set the pen down. "I'm not afraid of him anymore." "Good," Victoria replied, "because emotional detachment is the only way to win against men who underestimate you." Claire exhaled. "Prepare everything." "We'll file next week." Victoria nodded and left. Claire turned back to the window, the city glowing beneath the afternoon sun. She felt powerful, focused, free. But a flicker of sadness tugged at her chest. Not for Daniel. No. She mourned the version of herself who once believed him, the woman who waited for him, supported him, loved him. That Claire was gone, and the new one was unstoppable. Daniel arrived at the house in Vaucluse, a modern mansion overlooking the cliffs, the very same Claire used to call home. The driveway was empty, the windows dark. He ran to the front door, punching in the security code. Error. He tried again. Error. He tried a third time, sweat beading on his forehead. Access denied. His heart thudded harshly. Claire had changed the codes. He hammered on the door. "Claire, open the door. We need to talk." No answer. He circled to the back patio and tried the sliding doors. Locked. The glass shimmered cold and indifferent in the coastal breeze. He slammed his fist against it. "Claire!" Still silence, and then a voice from behind. "Mr. Hayes, you need to leave." Daniel turned sharply to see a private security officer standing near the gate. "What are you doing here?" Daniel demanded. "This is my house." "Not anymore," the guard replied. "Ownership was legally transferred 6 days ago." Daniel froze. 6 days? Ms. Morgan instructed us that you are not allowed onto the property without her authorization. Daniel felt the world tilt. 6 days ago. She had been planning even earlier than he thought. "This is insane," he said, backing away. "She can't just erase me." The guard's tone remained professional. "Sir, please step away from the property." Daniel glared at the house. The life he believed belonged to him. He felt something snap inside him. Not anger, something darker. Determination. "Fine," he muttered. "If she wants a war, I'll give her one." He walked off the property with a storm building behind his eyes. Back at Aurora Holdings, Claire ended her workday later than expected. She gathered her things, ready to head to her father's house for dinner as promised, but before she could leave, her assistant approached nervously. "Ms. Morgan, security has reported an incident." Claire's head lifted sharply. "What incident?" "Your husband attempted to enter the residence." Claire's stomach tightened, but her voice remained steady. "Did he get inside?" "No. Security turned him away, but—" The assistant hesitated. "They said he became volatile." Claire stared at the assistant, her heartbeat steady, controlled. "Thank you. You can go home now." When she stepped into the elevator, her reflection stared back at her, composed, strong, unbroken. But beneath that surface, something flickered, a warning. A shift in the wind. Daniel wasn't going to disappear easily, and the war he was about to start into would be uglier than any betrayal he had already committed. Claire arrived at her father's house in Darling Point just after sunset, the sky glowing orange over the harbour as the lights of Sydney flickered awake. The moment she stepped through the grand entrance, the familiar scent of sandalwood and cedar wrapped around her like a memory she had tried not to miss. Her father, Richard Morgan, stood at the bottom of the staircase in his usual tailored suit, arms crossed but eyes softening as soon as he saw her. "There she is," he said, pride warming his voice. Claire exhaled as he pulled her into a firm embrace. "Dad," she murmured, letting tension melt off her shoulders. "It's been a long day." "I watched the whole thing unfold," he said, guiding her into the living room. "You handled yourself like a queen." She offered a faint smile. "It wasn't easy. But it was necessary." Richard poured 2 glasses of wine and handed her one. "Daniel never deserved you, and after today, the entire city knows it too." Claire sipped her wine, letting the smooth warmth settle in her chest. "He tried to enter the house," she said quietly. Richard's expression darkened instantly. "Did he threaten you?" "No," Claire answered. "But he was angry, confused, humiliated." "Good," Richard said. "Let him sit with it." Claire sighed, rubbing her forehead. "I'm not afraid of him. I just don't want him spiraling." "People like Daniel don't spiral," Richard replied. "They scheme, they manipulate, they blame everyone but themselves." Claire stared into her glass. "I'm filing for divorce next week." Richard nodded approvingly. "I'll increase security around you until everything is finalized." Claire smiled softly. "Thank you." "You don't thank family," he said. Family protects family. Meanwhile, across the city, Daniel stood in a cramped, outdated hotel room in Parramatta, the only place he could afford without access to joint accounts. A flickering lamp illuminated peeling wallpaper and a stained carpet. His suit jacket lay crumpled on the floor, his tie hung loose. He paced like a caged animal. "She planned this," he growled to himself. "She took my job, my house. She humiliated me in front of everyone." He grabbed a half-empty whiskey bottle and drank straight from it. "I built that company," he muttered, slamming the bottle onto the table. "I was supposed to be CEO. Me." He checked his phone again. No messages from Mia. No support from his colleagues, no sympathy from anyone. Only headlines and gossip. He tossed the phone onto the bed. "She thinks she can erase me," he whispered to the empty room. "She thinks she can replace me?" His eyes sharpened with a creeping obsession. "No, no, Claire, I'm not done with you." Later that night, Claire sat with her father on the terrace overlooking the water. Waves rolled gently below as a cool breeze traced the edge of the marble railing. Richard leaned back in his chair. "There's something we need to discuss." Claire looked up. "What is it?" "The board," he said. "They want you to fly to Melbourne next week to finalize the Hastings transition." She nodded. "That's fine, I can go. You'll take security with you." She frowned. "Dad? That's not necessary." "It is," he said firmly. "Daniel won't go quietly, and men who lose everything at once can be unpredictable." Claire hesitated, staring at the skyline. "Do you think he'd hurt me?" Richard didn't answer immediately. He reached forward, placing a hand on hers. "I think," he said slowly, "that his pride is broken, and broken pride is dangerous." Claire swallowed. She hated that he was right. "I'll take security," she finally agreed. "Good," Richard said. "Now eat something. You look exhausted." She chuckled softly. "I am." They shared dinner, laughter, and warmth, moments Claire hadn't realized she was starving for. But even as she smiled, even as she relaxed against the comforting presence of her father, a small knot of unease twisted at the back of her mind. Something was shifting, growing, approaching. At that same hour, Daniel sat at the edge of his hotel bed, illuminated only by the dim city lights seeping through the curtains. He held his phone, staring at a photo, one he hadn't looked at in months. Claire, at their wedding, smiling at him like he was the only man in the world. He touched the phone screen as though it were her face. "You still love me," he whispered, voice trembling. "I know you do, you have to." He lifted his head slowly, eyes hollow, determination settling into something darker. "I'm going to talk to you, Claire," he said. "I'm going to make you understand." He stood, pulling on his jacket with shaky hands. and I'm not letting you leave me." His voice cracked into a whisper. Not without a fight. The next morning, Claire arrived early at Aurora Holdings. The building was quiet, the kind of quiet that happens before Sydney's financial district fully wakes. She liked it this way, calm, focused, undisturbed. Her heels echoed through the polished lobby as she made her way toward the private elevator. But halfway there, a security guard approached her. "Ms. Morgan," he said carefully, "there was an incident last night." Claire stopped. "What kind of incident?" "A man tried to enter the building after hours. He claimed he needed to speak with you urgently." Claire's breath stilled. "Was it Daniel?" The guard nodded. "Yes, ma'am. He was agitated. We escorted him off the premises, but he refused to leave for almost an hour." Claire inhaled deeply, steadying herself. "Thank you for telling me. Please tighten protocols. Only pre-approved visitors." "Already done," he replied. "Your safety is our priority." Claire entered the elevator alone. As the doors closed, her reflection stared back, poised, composed, but there was a tension beneath the surface now. A warning. Daniel was circling, closing in. She just didn't know how close he would get. Upstairs, she immersed herself in work. Meetings, calls, strategy sessions. Hastings International required precision, and she delivered exactly that. But even as she spoke confidently to investors, the back of her mind throbbed with the truth. Daniel wasn't coping, and unstable men didn't back down. They escalated. As she finished reviewing final transition documents, her assistant entered with a hesitant knock. "Ms. Morgan, and there's something you need to see." She handed Claire a tablet. Claire tapped the screen. A video opened. Daniel, outside Aurora Holdings, recorded by someone passing by. His voice was strained, wild, desperate. "Claire! Claire, talk to me. You can't do this to me. This is my company. I deserve answers. Claire." Claire's fingers tightened around the tablet. Her assistant swallowed. "It's gone viral." Of course it had. Public meltdown. Perfect fuel for the media. "Thank you," Claire said, forcing calm. "That will be all." The assistant nodded and stepped out. Claire closed the video with trembling fingers. Not from fear, from disappointment, from heartbreak. From the crushing realization that the man she once trusted was spiraling into someone she didn't recognize, someone she needed to distance herself from immediately. She picked up the phone and dialed her father. "I need extra protection," she said quietly. Richard didn't hesitate. "Done." Meanwhile, on the opposite side of the city, Daniel was losing the fragile grip he had left on reality. He paced outside a cafe in Surrey Hills, sunken eyes flicking to every phone that pointed vaguely in his direction. "They're all watching me," he muttered. "They think I'm crazy. I'm not crazy. She's my wife. She owes me a conversation." He tried calling Mia, blocked. Then he tried his parents. They didn't answer. He called an old colleague. "Mate, you need help," the man said before hanging up. Daniel tossed the phone onto the table in frustration. "No one understands. No one gets it." He lifted his head slowly. "She loved me. She still does. I know she does." His gaze sharpened, pupils narrowing with something delusional. "And I'm going to prove it." He stood abruptly, nearly knocking over the chair. His movements were sharp, determined, bordering manic. He checked the time. Claire would be leaving work soon. He knew her routines, he knew her habits, and he knew exactly where to wait. "We're going to fix this today," he whispered. Evening fell. Claire stepped out of Aurora Holdings with two security guards walking closely beside her. The streets were busy, but the guards formed a protective formation as she entered the underground parking area. She reached her car, a sleek black Range Rover. One guard opened the door for her. "Evening, Ms. Morgan," she offered a small smile. "Thank you." She slid into the back seat. The car door closed. The engine started, but she didn't see the figure hiding behind the concrete pillar, just meters away. Daniel watched as the SUV began to move, his jaw clenched, breathing unsteady. "You're not getting away from me," he whispered. He stepped out of the shadows, eyes locked on the vehicle, and as the SUV turned toward the exit ramp, Daniel rushed into the lane, slamming his hands on the hood. The guards shouted. The driver braked hard. Claire looked up, her heart dropping into her stomach. Daniel stood in front of the car, tears streaking his face, voice cracking. "Claire, please talk to me." The guards rushed toward him, but Daniel didn't move. He stood his ground like a man ready to shatter. Claire felt the world tilt. This was no longer a tantrum, no longer humiliation. This was obsession, a dangerous kind, the kind that didn't end well. "Daniel," she whispered under her breath. But he couldn't hear her. He was too far gone. And the moment security grabbed him, dragging him away, kicking and shouting her name, Claire knew this was only the beginning. Daniel Hayes wasn't done, and the storm he carried inside him was about to break loose. The moment the guards dragged Daniel away from the SUV, Claire felt her pulse spike, sharp, cold, instinctive. She watched through the tinted window as he kicked, shouted, and twisted against the security team, his voice echoing violently through the underground car park. Claire, please, just talk to me. You can't do this. You can't leave me." His desperation bounced off the concrete walls like a siren. The guards pinned him to the ground. One radioed for backup. Another held him by the shoulders, keeping him from throwing himself toward the vehicle again. Claire forced herself to breathe, even though her chest felt tight. "Ma'am," the driver said gently, "would you like us to exit through the private ramp?" Claire swallowed. "Yes, please, now." The SUV pulled away slowly, while Daniel's screams faded behind them. Claire kept her eyes fixed forward, refusing to brake, even though her hands trembled in her lap. This wasn't the man she married. This wasn't even a man anymore. This was a threat. Back at her father's estate in Darling Point, Richard opened the door before Claire could even knock. One look at her face and his jaw tightened. "What happened?" Claire stepped inside, voice thin. "He confronted me at the parking entrance." Richard's expression darkened instantly. Was he violent? "Not physically," she whispered, "but he blocked the car and he was screaming. He wouldn't move." Richard closed his eyes, exhaling slowly. "I knew this would happen." "He's not well," Claire said, sinking onto the couch. "He's not thinking clearly. I don't think he even knows what he's doing anymore." Richard knelt in front of her, taking her hands. "Listen to me. You owe him nothing. Nothing. Every choice he's making now is his responsibility, not yours." Claire nodded, but her heart still throbbed painfully. "I don't want him hurt, but I can't let him near me." "And you won't," Richard said firmly. "Tomorrow we file for an interim restraining order. I'll have security outside your building 24 hours a day. You'll travel only with drivers from now on." Claire took a shaky breath. "Dad, he needs help." "I agree," Richard said, "but he is not your responsibility anymore." For the first time since the takeover, Claire felt tears prick her eyes, not from fear but from grief. The grief of finally accepting that the man she once loved was gone. Across the city, in a police holding room in Surrey Hills, Daniel sat hunched over, hands shaking, eyes red from anger and exhaustion. An officer set a cup of water in front of him. "You were warned multiple times," the officer said. "You can't block a vehicle, especially in a private corporate facility." Daniel laughed bitterly. "I wasn't blocking anyone. I was trying to talk to my wife." Ex-wife, the officer corrected. She's already changed her legal name. Daniel's face twisted in pain. She can't just erase me. The officer sighed. Look, mate, you need to let her go. What you're doing is only making things worse. Daniel slammed his hand on the table. I'm not letting her walk away. She's everything. I just need to explain. The officer interrupted. You're being released with a warning, but if you approach her again, it won't just be a warning next time. Daniel stood trembling with rage. I'm not the villain here, she is. But even he didn't believe it anymore. Later that night, Daniel wandered through the rocks, the old sandstone alleys glowing under warm street lamps. Tourists laughed, bars buzzed, life continued without him. He felt invisible. Discarded. Forgotten. He sat on a bench overlooking the harbour. His breath hitched, his throat burned, his mind spiraled. Everyone turned against me, he whispered. Everyone but her. She loved me once. Move. Richard closed his eyes, exhaling slowly. I knew this would happen. He's not well, Claire said, sinking onto the couch. He's not thinking clearly. I don't think he even knows what he's doing anymore. Richard knelt in front of her, taking her hands. Listen to me, you owe him nothing. Nothing. Every choice he's making now is his responsibility, not yours. Claire nodded, but her heart still throbbed painfully. I don't want him hurt, but I can't let him near me. And you won't, Richard said firmly. Tomorrow we file for an interim restraining order. I'll have security outside your building 24 hours a day. You'll travel only with drivers from now on. Claire took a shaky breath. Dad, he needs help. I agree, Richard said, but he is not your responsibility anymore. For the first time since the takeover, Claire felt tears prick her eyes, not from fear but from grief. The grief of finally accepting that the man she once loved was gone. Across the city, in a police holding room in Surrey Hills, Daniel sat hunched over, hands shaking, eyes red from anger and exhaustion. An officer set a cup of water in front of him. You were warned multiple times, the officer said. You can't block a vehicle, especially in a private corporate facility. Daniel laughed bitterly. I wasn't blocking anyone. I was trying to talk to my wife. Ex-wife, the officer corrected. She's already changed her legal name. Daniel's face twisted in pain. She can't just erase me. The officer sighed. Look, mate, you need to let her go. What you're doing is only making things worse. Daniel slammed his hand on the table. I'm not letting her walk away. She's everything. I just need to explain. The officer interrupted. You're being released with a warning, but if you approach her again, it won't just be a warning next time. Daniel stood trembling with rage. I'm not the villain here, she is. But even he didn't believe it anymore. Later that night, Daniel wandered through the rocks, the old sandstone alleys glowing under warm street lamps. Tourists laughed, bars buzzed, life continued without him. He felt invisible. Discarded. Forgotten. He sat on a bench overlooking the harbour. His breath hitched, his throat burned, his mind spiraled. Everyone turned against me, he whispered. Everyone but her. She loved me once. He wiped his face with trembling hands. If I could just talk to her, he murmured. Really talk to her. She'd understand. She'd remember who we were. He stared at the water, the city lights dancing across the waves. I'm not giving up, he whispered. Not until she listens. His expression hardened slowly. Something snapping. Something sinking deeper into obsession. She will hear me, he said, because I'm not leaving her, not again. At the same moment, Claire lay in a guest room of her father's estate. Wrapped in a soft blanket, she stared at the ceiling, unable to sleep. Her mind replayed everything. Daniel at the car. Daniel screaming her name. Daniel's face twisted in a mixture of fear, loss, and rage. She pressed a hand to her chest. This can't continue, she whispered to the quiet room. She turned on her side, closing her eyes. But sleep stayed far away. Because deep inside her, she knew Daniel wasn't going to stop. And the next time he came for her, he wouldn't be begging. He would be breaking. By the next morning, Sydney felt different, colder, sharper, as if the city itself sensed something shifting beneath its glittering surface. Claire stood on the balcony of her father's mansion, the early sun painting the harbour in soft gold. She held a cup of tea between her hands, trying to steady the tremor she couldn't quite shake off. Behind her, footsteps approached. Rough night? Her father asked gently. Claire didn't turn. I couldn't sleep. Richard stepped beside her. Then we moved forward. Today we file the restraining order, first thing. Claire nodded. And Daniel? Richard's expression hardened. Daniel will face consequences, whether he accepts them or not. At the same time, in a dingy motel in Parramatta, Daniel jolted awake on the stained mattress. He had slept in his clothes, his head throbbed, his mouth was dry, his mind foggy. But the moment he remembered the incident at the car park, the humiliation hit him like a punch to the ribs. He sat up fast, gripping his hair. Why wouldn't she talk to me? He muttered. He stood abruptly, pacing the cramped room. I just needed 5 minutes, that's all. He grabbed his phone. No messages, no missed calls, nothing but silence. He threw it onto the bed with a growl. Fine, he whispered. I'll find another way. He paced again, mind racing, emotions boiling. She'll listen to me eventually, she has to. His breathing grew shallow, unsteady. She can't just take my life away and pretend I don't exist. His voice cracked. She can't. Pause. Then something in him shifted. Something sharp. Something dangerous. If she won't come to me, he whispered, I'll go to her. Meanwhile, Claire arrived at the courthouse with her lawyer, Victoria. The building was busy. Journalists outside, lawyers weaving through crowds, the usual bustle of legal chaos. But Claire walked with calm, with purpose, with the steady resolve of a woman protecting herself. They filed the paperwork quietly, efficiently, legally perfect. The interim order should be active within hours, Victoria said, adjusting her blazer as they walked back to the car. He won't be able to come within 200 meters of you, your home, or your workplace. Claire nodded. Relief washed through her like a warm current. Thank you. Claire, Victoria said, pausing before getting into the car. You're doing the right thing. Claire breathed in slowly. I know. I just wish it didn't have to come to this. Victoria's expression softened. You didn't choose this. He forced it. Claire looked down. I loved him once. He stopped being the man you loved, Victoria replied. You're not divorcing the man you married. You're divorcing the man he became. The words hit deep, true, painful, necessary. Claire drove back to Aurora Holdings, with security escorting her vehicle. She entered through a private elevator, head high, determination tightening her spine. Today, she would not be rattled. She refused to be. But Daniel was already 3 steps ahead. He had taken a train into the city. He wore sunglasses, a hat pulled low, blending into commuter crowds. He felt invisible, yet electrified, energized by desperation, powered by obsession. He reached the street across from Aurora Holdings and stopped. Security guards patrolled every corner. SUVs rolled in and out of underground parking. Cameras scanned the sidewalks. Daniel narrowed his eyes. "She thinks this will stop me," he whispered. His attention snapped toward the side entrance, an exit he knew well from his years working in the building. Staff occasionally stepped out there for breaks. From there, it was easy to slip into restricted levels if you knew the layout. And Daniel knew the building better than most. A dangerous idea formed in the back of his mind. "If she won't talk to me willingly," he murmured, "I'll make her listen." Inside the building, Claire entered her office and froze. A bouquet sat on her desk, white roses, dozens of them. She stiffened immediately. "Who put these here?" she asked sharply. Her assistant turned pale. I thought they were from your father. They were delivered 10 minutes ago." Claire's stomach dropped. She approached the bouquet slowly, dread building with each step. A small card peeked through the petals. She pulled it out. One line written in Daniel's handwriting, "You can't shut me out." Claire felt the air leave her lungs. "Call security," she said instantly. "Now." Her assistant fumbled for her phone. Claire stepped back from the flowers, pulse racing violently. "How did these get inside?" she asked. "Through the lobby?" The assistant shook her head. "No, they were left at the executive elevator." Claire felt ice crawl across her skin. That elevator was restricted. No one should have access except senior leadership. That meant Daniel either found a way inside, or someone let the flowers through without knowing what they meant. Either possibility was terrifying. Moments later, security rushed into the room. "Ms. Morgan, we're securing all entrances now. We'll review the cameras." Claire nodded, trying to steady her breathing. "Make sure every floor is monitored. He's getting closer." And then a thought hit her, sharp, cold. Daniel knew the building too well, too intimately. If he was already inside, her heart pounded. The guard spoke urgently into his radio. "Lock down all floors now." Outside, Daniel smirked as he slipped through a service corridor, tucked behind construction tops. He heard the sudden alarms, the clicking of access doors sealing off. "Too late," he whispered. He knew exactly where he was going, exactly where she would be. And with every step he took, the line between love and obsession blurred completely. Claire had taken everything from him. Now, he was going to take something back. Inside Aurora Holdings, tension snapped through the air like static. Security guards moved swiftly through the hallways, scanning every corner, every hallway, every restricted door. But Claire stood frozen in the center of her office, the card still in her hand, her breath shallow, her heartbeat pounding like distant thunder. She didn't cry, she didn't shake, she didn't fall apart. She had spent months rebuilding herself, brick by brick, decision by decision, after Daniel broke her. But now he wasn't just a memory or a mistake. He was inside her building. And the reality of that danger pressed against her spine. Her assistant rushed in, pale and frantic. "Ms. Morgan, security wants you moved to the panic suite on level 56. Claire nodded. "I'll go now." But before she could step away from the desk, her phone lit up. Unknown number. Her stomach twisted. Her assistant whispered, "Don't answer it." Claire stared at the screen, her pulse thundering in her ears. Then the phone vibrated again, more violently, as if whoever was calling refused to be ignored. Unknown number. She exhaled sharply. She answered. Claire. Daniel's voice came through, low, trembling, eerily calm. Why are you running from me? Claire's blood chilled. Daniel, stop this. You can't be here. You need help. I don't need help, he said with a shaky laugh. I need you. Her grip tightened around the phone. Breaking into my building, stalking me, sending threats, that's not love. That's not a threat, Daniel snapped, the calm vanishing. It's a warning. You can't just cut me out of your life like I'm irrelevant. You made yourself irrelevant, she said quietly. Silence. A dangerous silence. Then Daniel whispered, I'm close, Claire. Claire's breath stopped. She ended the call instantly. Her assistant grabbed her arm. We have to go now. Security guards rushed her toward the private elevator, forming a shield around her, moving in quick formation. But as the doors closed, on the 53rd floor, hidden behind a structural pillar, Daniel watched the elevator numbers change. He smiled. You won't hide from me, he murmured. Not today. The panic suite on level 56 was a high-security safe room, designed for emergency lockdowns. Reinforced steel walls, no external access, hidden cameras. Only a few executives even knew it existed. As Claire stepped inside, her knees nearly buckled from the adrenaline still surging through her. Richard's voice came through the interior phone immediately. Claire, are you safe? Yes, she whispered. But he's inside the building, Dad. He's really here. I'm on my way with private security, Richard said. Stay inside. Do not open that door for anyone except the head guard. Claire leaned her forehead against the cool wall. The room felt small, too small. Her thoughts raced. The Daniel she married would never have done this. The Daniel she loved would have talked, cried, apologized. But this Daniel, he wasn't looking for closure. He was looking for control. On the 54th floor, alarms blared as security locked down every exit. Guards swept through conference rooms, utility corridors, stairwells. But Daniel moved like a ghost. He knew the blind spots, he knew the shortcuts, he knew the old maintenance shafts where cameras never reached. He paused at a glass wall overlooking the city. She has everything, he whispered bitterly. My job, my house, my life. He turned sharply, eyes full of fire. And she thinks she can take my dignity too? He pulled out his phone. On the screen, the picture of Claire on their wedding day. He pressed the photo to his chest, closing his eyes as if it gave him strength. She was supposed to be mine forever. He opened his eyes slowly. And if I can't have her, no one will. Back in the panic suite, Claire paced in tight circles. She checked the security monitor screens, nothing but empty hallways. She checked her phone. No new messages, except one that made her heart drop. A new voicemail. From Daniel. With trembling fingers, she pressed play. His voice came through in a whisper, calm, fragile, terrifying. Claire, I saw you going up. I'm not far, I just want to talk, I just want to see you. You can't hide from me forever. We belong together. You know that, don't you? Claire covered her mouth, tears prickling her eyes. Then a faint banging echoed from outside the panic suite hallway. She froze. Her breath stopped. Another bang. Closer this time. Security's voice crackled through the comm speaker. Ms. Morgan, stay away from the door. We are approaching now. Bang. Claire backed up against the far wall, pulse skyrocketing. Bang. Daniel? She whispered before she could stop herself. Bang. The metal door shook. Claire! Daniel's voice roared from the hallway. Open this door! Her heart slammed against her ribs. Claire, let me in. He pounded the steel barrier with everything he had, the sound vibrating through the walls. You owe me a conversation. Daniel, stop! Claire cried through the door. This isn't you. His voice dropped to an eerie, broken whisper. Open the door or I will break it down. Claire pressed both hands over her mouth to stop herself from screaming. She was trapped. He was losing control. And the line between a desperate man and a dangerous one had officially disappeared. The pounding on the steel door grew louder, more violent, each hit echoing through the reinforced room like a hammer against Claire's ribs. She pressed herself into the corner, her breath shallow, her body trembling with the instinctive fear of a trapped animal. Claire! Daniel roared again, voice cracking under sheer desperation. You can't do this. Open this door right now. His fist slammed again and again and again. The sound was primal, unhinged. The sound of a man who had crossed the threshold between heartbreak and madness. Claire's voice shook. Daniel, stop, please. You're going to get arrested. Silence. Horrible, suffocating silence. Then a single quiet sentence that chilled her to the bone. If I can't talk to you, I don't know what I might do. Claire squeezed her eyes shut. Security is coming. You need to leave, Daniel. Please, just go. You're not well. A short, ragged breath came from the other side. Then, you're right. Claire opened her eyes slowly. Daniel's voice turned eerily calm, too calm. I'm not well, and it's your fault. Claire's stomach twisted. Daniel, don't say that. You abandoned me, he whispered. You destroyed me, you took everything, and now you want to pretend I don't exist. His voice cracked. I loved you. Claire's heart clenched painfully. Daniel, listen to me. You need help. You need... She didn't finish. Because suddenly, the security camera inside the panic suite flickered. Static, glitching, a momentary blackout. Claire's breath froze. Then the red recording light died. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." He'd cut the feed. He knew exactly where the junction boxes were, exactly which panel to pull, exactly how to go dark in this building. He wasn't acting blindly. He was planning. Claire grabbed the emergency phone, dialing security with trembling hands. "It's Claire Morgan," she said breathlessly. "He's outside the panic suite. He cut the cameras. You need to get here immediately." "We're on the way," a guard shouted, and she could hear radios buzzing in the background. She hung up and backed away from the door, far, far away, every nerve screaming. Then she heard it. Daniel's whisper, inches from the other side. "I can hear you breathing." Claire slapped her hands over her mouth to silence herself. "I know you're in there, Claire," Daniel murmured. "I know you're scared, but you shouldn't be scared of me. I'm not the enemy." His voice dropped to a chilling softness. "You are." Claire shook as tears filled her eyes. "Please, Daniel," she whispered, "don't do this." "So you ruined my life," he whispered. "Now I get to ruin yours." Suddenly, footsteps, heavy, fast, rushing down the hall. Security. "Step away from the door," a guard barked. Daniel let out a laugh, broken, hollow, terrifying. "That's my cue." Claire pressed her back to the far wall, shaking. "Outside!" Shouting erupted. "Stop right there. Let me see your hands. Get down now." Then she heard scuffling, grunts, shoes scraping on the floor, an object hitting the wall. Daniel screaming. Guards shouting. The violent chaos of a desperate man finally being cornered. A thud. Then silence. Claire stood frozen, tears streaming down her face. Seconds later, someone knocked gently on the steel door. "Miss Morgan," a voice called. "It's security. He's restrained. You're safe." Claire's knees buckled, and she collapsed into a trembling kneel on the floor. Safe. She was safe. But as she cried into her hands, she felt something deeper inside her break. Not from fear, not from pain, but from the devastating truth. The man she once loved wasn't coming back, because he no longer existed. Later that afternoon, the building returned to its tense normalcy. Police lights flashed outside Aurora Holdings. Officers escorted Daniel out of the building in handcuffs, his face contorted between anger and despair. Reporters swarmed. "Mr. Hayes, why were you inside the building? Is it true you attempted to break into the panic suite? Are you aware of the restraining order filed against you today?" Daniel glared at the cameras, breaths heaving. "She lied," he spat. "She lied about everything. I just wanted to talk." Officers pushed him into the police car as he struggled. "You can't do this," he shouted. "She's my wife." The door slammed shut. But the world had already decided. Daniel Hayes was no longer a respected executive. He was a danger, a cautionary tale, a man unraveled. Inside the building, Claire's father arrived in a storm of fear and fury. The moment he saw her, he rushed forward and wrapped her tightly in his arms. "You're safe now," he murmured. "I've got you." Claire sobbed against his chest. "Dad, he was right outside the door. He could have—" Richard tightened his grip. "I'm here and I won't let anything happen to you, not ever." Her voice cracked. "What happens now?" Richard pulled back, looking into her shaken eyes. "Now," he said softly. "Now we end this. Permanently." The sun was setting over Sydney by the time Claire finally stepped outside the building. Her legs still felt weak, her breath shaky, but with her father's arm around her shoulders, she pushed forward, one step at a time. Richard guided her toward the waiting SUV. His jaw was clenched so tightly, the muscle at his temple pulsed with cold rage. "This ends tonight," he said. Claire shook her head faintly. "Dad, he needs help." Richard opened the door for her. "He needs consequences." She hesitated, torn between compassion and survival, between the echo of loving him once and the truth of needing protection now. "Claire," Richard said more gently, "you are not responsible for his breakdown. You're responsible for your safety." Claire nodded slowly, finally stepping into the SUV. As they drove toward Darling Point, the city lights blurred through the windows, shimmering like distant ghosts of the life she used to have. A life she once shared, a life that no longer existed. She closed her eyes and let that truth settle. At the same time, in a police interrogation room in Sydney CBD, Daniel sat handcuffed to a metal table. His hair was disheveled, his tie crooked, his suit wrinkled and stained from hours of struggle and panic. He looked nothing like the man he had been a month ago, or even a week ago or yesterday. A detective entered, placing a file on the table. "Mr. Hayes, you're facing multiple charges: breach of private property, harassment, violation of a court order, and attempted forced entry." Daniel blinked slowly. Confusion flickered in his eyes. "What court order?" he asked. The detective opened the file. "The restraining order Ms. Morgan filed this morning." Daniel's mouth parted. She did that?" he whispered. The detective nodded. Daniel slumped in his chair, staring blankly at the floor. "She really hates me," he murmured. "No," the detective said. "She's afraid of you." Daniel closed his eyes, and for the first time something broke open inside him. Something raw, something hollow, something he had been refusing to face. He whispered, "I didn't mean to scare her." But intentions didn't matter anymore. Only impact. The detective gathered his papers. "You'll be held overnight. A judge will see you in the morning." As he left the room, Daniel whispered into the empty space, "I just wanted her to talk to me." But the silence swallowed his words whole. Back at her father's home, Claire sat wrapped in a blanket on the terrace, overlooking the harbour glowing under the twilight sky. Her father brought her tea, placing it beside her. "You don't have to talk," he said softly. "Just breathe." Claire did, slowly. Finally, after a long silence, she whispered, "I never wanted it to end like this." Richard sat beside her. Sometimes endings are brutal because the beginning was a lie. Claire closed her eyes. Tears slipped down her cheeks. "I really loved him." "I know," her father said, "and that's why this hurts, but loving a man who breaks you isn't loyalty. It's self-destruction." Claire turned her face toward him. "Do you think he'll ever get better?" Richard sighed. "If he gets real help, maybe. But that isn't your journey anymore." She nodded faintly. The truth